Welcome to Humanity's Awakening. I'm Nanice. No one ever said awakening was going to be easy. In fact, for those of us who have been on this path for years, many years, we know that awakening is anything but easy. My friend once said that he thought awakening was like taking off in a plane, and once you reached a certain altitude, you just coasted. But after embarking on the journey himself, he realized that it was more like taking off in a plane and constantly hitting turmoil after turmoil after turmoil. Awakening is tough. Awakening doesn't let us hide from anything. Many of us have been going through our own personal awakenings for years now. For me, I probably started when I was 11 years old, when I really started seeking. It's been a long journey, a long and wonderful journey. I can say that now. I didn't always say that. So for those of us who have been on this journey for a while, we know that awakening is tough and rough and has its ups and downs. And so now what we're witnessing is the collective of humanity beginning to awaken. And it's rough and it's tough, and most certainly has its ups and downs. And sometimes at the same time, in the same day, you can feel on top of the world and down in the depths of despair, and sometimes not even know why. And beyond even our own personal experiences, the world is crazy now. It's literally the crazy circus. It's like the crazy circus on steroids. And when the world is so crazy, what can you trust? Who can you trust? There's so many convincing narratives. Many of them contradict one another. It's hard to know. It's hard to know who to believe. It's hard to know what to believe. Fortunately, we each come equipped with our own inner voice. And this inner voice always tells us the truth. Now, we may not recognize the inner voice. We may not listen to the inner voice. But the inner voice can only tell truth. This is what the inner voice does. Because the inner voice is connected to Source, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. Personally, I like to call it God because we're on first name basis, but you can call it Shem or whatever you want. It's all one and the same thing. And so when each of us listens to that inner voice inside, we are connected to the same one source. Sometimes that inner voice seems to be silent. And oftentimes it's silent because we're not listening. We only get as much information as we're willing to follow. So we'll get some guidance. And we may think, I'm not getting anything. But we're not listening. So we don't get any more guidance. It's like that little voice waits. It waits for us to follow the guidance we've been given before the next step is offered. And so this is why it's so important to listen to the inner voice, to really listen, and to synchronize with that little voice. And it may be very little at first, but the more you listen, the louder and clearer it becomes. And you know what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like the critical mind, the judgmental mind, the confused or fearful mind. It has a quality all its own, a vibration like none other. And when you start to pay attention, you can recognize it. And the more you recognize it, the louder and clearer it becomes. Until one day it says turn left, and you turn left. And it says turn right, and you turn right. You know that inner voice because it's your one true voice, and it will never guide you wrong. Right now, with so much happening in the world, many people feel powerless and even helpless. And although this may seem true on the outside, when we learn to listen to the inner voice, we realize that we're anything but helpless and anything but powerless. And in fact, the entire universe is conspiring for our awakening, individually and collectively. The entire universe is conspiring for your awakening. Isn't that amazing? I've known that for a long time, and it's always been true. So even in my lowest moments, I have remembered that. And it's never, ever let me down. Listening to the inner voice is really not very complex. It can be as simple as what feels right and what feels wrong. We all have a sense of that. What feels right and what feels wrong. Now, if we don't listen to what feels right and what feels wrong, then we may not be able to recognize it. But as we listen and we do what feels right and we don't do what feels wrong, that inner sense of guidance gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so you ask yourself, does this thing feel right? Does this thing feel wrong? There are so many things to question right now in the universe. And it's up to you to question each one, to ask your inner being, and to listen for the answer. If something feels right, you know it. If something feels wrong, you can't avoid it. Even if you want to, you know when something feels wrong. And if we want to wake up, we have to follow our hearts. We have to follow that little voice that tells us what's right and what's wrong. I know on the spiritual path, many of us have been taught that, well, there's no such thing as right and wrong, and some even fall into the path of non-duality. But this is a lie that we've been told. And in fact, there is right and there is wrong. Just like there is love and there is evil. Love is right and evil is wrong. So yes, there is right and wrong. There is love and there is evil. And evil, whatever you might consider it, it is the opposite of love and it is the opposite of life. So with anything that you experience, whether it's a simple choice or a big life decision, simply go, drop within, and ask your inner self, does this feel right or does this feel wrong? And then have the courage to follow that guidance. Several months ago, when the pandemic first started to erupt, shall we say, my grandson was overhearing quite a bit of what was going on. He's 10. And one day he asked me, he said, Nani, he calls me Nani because he couldn't say Nanice when he was little, and I don't want to be called grandma, so he said, Nani, are we safe? And I said, yes, of course, absolutely, we are safe. And he said, but Nani, how do you know we're safe? How do you know we're really safe? And I said, well, I can feel it, I know. And then I realized, we were laying on my bed reading a book at the time. So I asked him to close his eyes and lay back, and I asked him to drop into his heart. I said, don't trust me, trust yourself. Ask your heart, are we safe? And at that point I had my hand over his heart, and he very gently took my hand off his heart. I realized at that moment he wanted to feel his own heart without my energy. And he laid there for a few moments. And then he opened his eyes, and he looked at me, and he smiled, and he said, thank you, Nani. His heart, like my heart, told him that yes, he was safe, and I was safe, and we are safe. And your heart has the same capacity. Your heart will always guide you. You might call it your gut. You might call it something else. It doesn't matter. You know what it is. And it's unique for you. And again, the more you listen, the clearer and louder it becomes. And not only that, but this guidance, this communication is not just one way, it's two ways. So just as we receive guidance, we also can communicate what we desire. Isn't that wonderful? We actually get to talk to Source and tell Source what we desire. Many call it prayer. But what prayer really is imagination. Simply imagining that which you desire for yourself, for others, for the world. Prayer is imagining what you desire for yourself, for the world, for others. It's that simple. And the way in which you imagine it is pretend that it's a memory. Pretend that it's already happened. all. So this inner voice, it's also a receiver. And it's important that we listen, and it's also important that we communicate. And again, we communicate through our imagination, by imagining what we do desire, not what we don't desire. And again, many of us call this prayer. This is the real prayer. This is how you pray. It's so simple. And all prayers are heard. And all prayers are honored. This time, this moment in time has been extraordinary. Every day. And it requires courage. And it requires trust. And it requires a sense of knowing that we are not alone. And that we are being guided. And that we have the capacity to know that guidance and follow that guidance. And we have the capacity every day. And if one day we forget, we can remember the next. There are no limits. In fact, this guidance, this love, is absolutely limitless and with us always. I have this sign in my bedroom. It says, "Be still and know that I am." I'm looking at it right now. And it's true. Quiet your mind. Be still and know that you are. You are. You are God. You are the universe. You are safe. And you are loved eternally. You are loved. And if it's safe for you right now, close your eyes for a moment and just drop into your heart. Imagine that your consciousness can drop right into your heart. And imagine that your heart is overflowing with abundant love. This is love from the Creator and love for the Creator. And this is love that is infinite. And this is love that you can give away. And it just keeps coming back over and over again, tenfold times infinity. And this love, not only it is in your heart, but it flows through your whole body. Every cell in your body vibrates with love. Vibrates with love. Before I go to bed each night, I end the day with a prayer. And it goes like this. Dear God, please let my words be your words. Let my thoughts be your thoughts. Let my actions be your actions. And let me be a channel of love to both give and receive. So be it. I hope you visit me on my website at nanice.com. And if you get a chance, email me. I'd love to hear from you. I try to answer all my emails. And one last thing. Remember, follow love and be kind. Bye for now.